Imagine a story that begins quietly, almost innocently, a boy born in a modest Brooklyn neighborhood, a student with sharp eyes and a sharper mind, someone who blended into the crowd yet never truly belonged to it. This boy would one day become one of the most powerful, mysterious, and dangerous figures in modern American criminal history, Jeffrey Epstein. And his rise, his hidden empire, and the dark network that followed him would span decades, destroy lives, and shake the foundations of global power. Jeffrey Epstein was born in 1953 to a working-class, Jewish family in Coney Island, Brooklyn. Nothing in his early environment suggested he would one day own private islands, private jets, or build a network of influence that reached presidents, princes, billionaires, scientists, and celebrities. But even as a teenager, there was something unusual about him, an ability to charm, to manipulate, and to make people feel he was smarter than he let on. Teachers describe him as quick, socially bold, but secretive. Friends recalled that he didn't just want approval, he wanted control. After graduating from high school, Epstein attended classes at Cooper Union and later NYU. But he never earned a degree. Despite that, he secured a job as a teacher at the prestigious Dalton School in Manhattan, one of the most expensive private schools in New York. How did someone without a degree land a top-level teaching job? That question still lingers. But what's known is that while teaching at Dalton, Epstein began building early relationships that would shape the next 40 years of his life. Wealthy parents, financiers, business owners, people he had no access to in Brooklyn suddenly became part of his world. And one parent in particular would change everything. Alan Ace Greenberg, the chairman of Bear Stearns. Greenberg was impressed by Epstein's confidence and brought him into the heart of Wall Street. This was the beginning of Epstein's true transformation. At Bear Stearns, Epstein quickly gained a reputation for making deals that nobody fully understood. He worked in risk arbitrage, but coworkers said he seemed to have his own way of doing things, deals off the books, clients kept confidential, information moving in ways that made no sense. And yet, he kept rising. By the early 1980s, Epstein left Bear Stearns under mysterious circumstances, though later documents suggested regulatory violations. But leaving didn't hurt him. Instead, he suddenly became wealthier. He formed J. Epstein and Company, a financial firm that allegedly managed the wealth of billionaires only. How he found these billionaires was unclear. How he convinced them to give him control of their finances was even more mysterious. But one client changed everything: Leslie Wexner, billionaire founder of Victoria's Secret, Bath and Body Works, and a major American retail empire. Wexner didn't just hire Epstein, he trusted him completely, gave him power of attorney, allowed him to buy and sell property in his name, allowed him to move millions. It was a partnership so strange, so one-sided, that prosecutors would later call it the foundation of his empire. During this period, Epstein began exhibiting patterns that would later become central to his criminal investigations. He hired young female assistants, extremely young. He gave them unusual tasks. He placed them in his homes. And slowly, Epstein's properties across the United States began to follow a pattern: many rooms, locked doors, high-security entry points, surveillance systems, and guest lists that were invite-only, monitored entirely by him. By the 1990s, Epstein's shadow world was fully formed. He purchased a mansion in Manhattan, a 50,000 square foot palace that was one of the largest private homes in the city. He bought a ranch in New Mexico, a massive estate in Florida, and then his most infamous purchase, Little St. James, a private island in the US Virgin Islands, a place that would be whispered about for years, a place locals called Pedophile Island. But to outsiders, everything looked legal. Epstein donated to scientific research, funded elite universities, attended high-profile galas, and mingled with the most powerful people in the world. Presidents flew on his jet. Princes stayed at his homes. Billionaires attended his dinners. And few questioned who he really was. Behind closed doors, however, something horrific was taking shape. Epstein began building a pipeline of girls, recruited through friends, schools, even malls. Most were young. Some were extremely young. Many were vulnerable, financially struggling, unstable families, runaways, or simply manipulated by Epstein's female recruiters who promised money, opportunities, modeling, or jobs. In reality, they were being brought into Epstein's system, a system built on fear, control, and exploitation. And still, nobody stopped him. By the early 2000s, complaints began to surface quietly. Parents noticing strange behavior, teens speaking to counselors, police receiving anonymous tips. But Epstein's power was massive: money, influence, attorneys, political donors, and connections. Every lead seemed to die. Every door seemed to close. Until 2005. That year, a mother in Palm Beach reported that Epstein had abused her 14-year-old daughter. This was the beginning of the investigation that cracked open the facade. Police found dozens of victims. Patterns. The same story repeated over and over. A pyramid scheme built on recruiting minors. Evidence inside his home. A massage table. Cameras. Logs. Notes. Schedules. A list of names. Police recommended multiple charges, including felonies that would send Epstein away for decades. But instead, a secret deal was negotiated. One of the most infamous deals in US legal history. A deal that will be exposed in detail in the next section. A deal that changed the course of the story forever. A deal that victims still describe today as a betrayal. A deal that helped Epstein rise even higher and fall even harder. But the truth behind Jeffrey Epstein's 2005 investigation was far darker and more disturbing than anyone in the public realized at the time. Palm Beach detectives believed they had built an airtight case, dozens of witnesses, forensic evidence, financial trails, behavioral patterns, and consistent victim testimonies. Detectives later said they had never encountered a suspect with such a well-organized system for abusing minors. Every room, every schedule, every assistant seemed to serve a specific role in Epstein's operation. And yet, even with everything they had, something invisible was blocking them. Behind the scenes, Epstein's lawyers, among the most expensive and powerful legal teams in the United States, began exerting pressure. These were attorneys who had represented intelligence officials, presidents, Fortune 500 corporations, and some of the most controversial cases in American history. They requested special meetings. They contacted top-level federal officials. They challenged the credibility of victims. They questioned investigative procedures. They filed motions at a speed that overwhelmed local authorities. And slowly, the momentum of the case shifted. By early 2006, what should have been a straightforward prosecution became a legal war. And in the middle of this war was U.S. Attorney Alexander Acosta, the man who would later become the Secretary of Labor. Acosta met privately with Epstein's lawyers, a decision that would become one of the most criticized moments in modern legal history. Out of these meetings came something extraordinary. Epstein's team requested a non-prosecution agreement, a deal that would shield not only Epstein, but also anyone who may have helped him: recruiters, assistants, employees, drivers, pilots, friends, and unnamed high-profile individuals. This was not a typical plea bargain. This was a shield. The victims were never told about this agreement. In fact, they were deliberately kept in the dark. Emails later revealed that prosecutors were instructed not to inform the girls, because if they knew, they might object, and their objections could destroy the deal. In 2008, Jeffrey Epstein officially pled guilty to 2 state charges: soliciting prostitution and soliciting a minor, charges intentionally framed to sound less severe than the reality. In exchange, he received an astonishing sentence: 18 months in a county jail. No federal charges, no trial, no exposure of his network. But the real scandal was how Epstein served that sentence. He was allowed to leave jail 6 days a week, 12 hours a day. On work release, a privilege never granted to sex offenders. He spent these hours in an office where he continued to meet with associates and conduct business. Guards describe his cell as comfortable, his privileges as unusual, and his treatment as unlike anything we've ever seen. He was released. After 13 months, the case faded. The media moved on. Epstein returned to his mansions, his private jets, his island, his parties, his network of power. He resumed the same patterns, recruited the same way, traveled the same routes, and for years, nothing stopped him. But the victims did not disappear. They grew older. They understood more. And they became angry. One victim, then another began filing civil lawsuits. They spoke to journalists. They contacted investigators. They found each other. And the more they spoke, the more the story grew. The settlement agreements Epstein forced them to sign had loopholes. And the women used those loopholes to fight back. Meanwhile, deeper questions began to circulate. How did he earn his money? Why did billionaires trust him with their finances? Why did he have connections to intelligence figures? Why did so many powerful people visit his properties? And how did he keep getting away with everything? For nearly a decade, these questions simmered quietly. Until 2018. That year, the Miami Herald published a bombshell investigation titled Perversion of Justice. Journalist Julie K. Brown interviewed dozens of victims, uncovered hidden documents, and exposed the secret non-prosecution agreement. The investigation reignited public outrage. Members of Congress demanded answers. Acosta was questioned. Epstein's past resurfaced. And this time, the public was watching closely. A federal investigation reopened. Victims testified. Flights, logs, emails, schedules, and witness statements were re-examined. And then, in July 2019, the moment everyone had been waiting for arrived. Jeffrey Epstein was arrested at Teterboro Airport after returning from Paris on his private jet. When authorities raided his Manhattan mansion, what they found shocked even seasoned investigators. Thousands of photos, locked safes, CDs labeled with names, hard drives, high-resolution cameras hidden in rooms, piles of cash, diamonds, and multiple passports.
Both of them.
And then, on August 10, 2019, Jeffrey Epstein was found dead in his cell, officially ruled a suicide. For many people, Jeffrey Epstein's death was supposed to be the end of the story. A disgraced financier, a convicted sex offender, and a man whose crime spanned decades, gone. Case closed. But in reality, his death was the opening of an even bigger chapter. Because once Epstein was no longer alive, the system that had protected him for so long began to crack, and the world started asking questions. that no one had dared to confront, directly while he could still talk. The first question was simple. What actually happened inside that jail cell? The Metropolitan Correctional Center in Manhattan was supposed to be one of the most secure facilities in the United States. Yet on the night of Epstein's death, everything that could go wrong. Did cameras outside his cell malfunctioned? 2. Guards assigned to check on him every 30 minutes fell asleep. The logbook was falsified, and for the first time in months, Epstein was left alone in a cell. The autopsy added more chaos. The New York City Medical Examiner ruled it a suicide. But Dr. Michael Baden, a world-renowned forensic pathologist who observed the autopsy on behalf of Epstein's brother, publicly stated that the injuries to Epstein's neck were more consistent with homicidal strangulation than suicide. Suddenly, the world was split in two: those who believed he killed himself, and those who believed someone helped him die. Regardless of the truth, one thing was certain. Epstein's death didn't end the case, it accelerated it. Because now, the spotlight shifted to the one person who had been by his side for years: Ghislaine Maxwell. Maxwell wasn't just a former girlfriend. Many victims describe her as the architect of Epstein's operation, the recruiter, the gatekeeper, the person who normalized everything. She was the one who found girls, groomed them, gained their trust, and delivered them into Epstein's system. And yet, for years, she lived freely between London, New York, and her secluded New Hampshire estate. After Epstein's death, public pressure mounted. Victims demanded justice. Investigators reopened files. Journalists tracked her every move. For a year, she vanished completely. No public appearances. No confirmed sightings. Nothing. Until July 2020, when FBI agents found her hiding in a luxury home in New Hampshire, protected by cameras, gates, and private security. Her arrest reignited the entire case. During her trial in 2021, victims took the stand one by one, describing graphic scenes of manipulation, grooming, and abuse. They describe how Maxwell would approach them, often presenting herself as a big sister figure before slowly drawing them into Epstein's circle. The testimonies were so consistent and so disturbing that even observers in the courtroom struggled to maintain composure. Maxwell was convicted on 5 federal charges, including sex trafficking of minors. She was sentenced to 20 years in prison. But even after her conviction, the big questions remained. Who else was involved? Who else knew? And why were so many powerful individuals connected to Epstein? Flight logs from Epstein's private jet, the Lolita Express, listed politicians, CEOs, celebrities, royals, scientists, and billionaires. Visitor logs from his homes showed meetings with world leaders and major financiers. For decades, people came and went freely from his properties, including the notorious private island in the Virgin Islands. Many insisted they knew nothing. Some admitted to socializing with him but denied any involvement. Others remained silent. In the years after Epstein's death, lawsuits continued to expose more details. Victims filed cases against banks that handled Epstein's money. Deutsche Bank and JP Morgan Chase ultimately paid hundreds of millions in settlements for ignoring warning signs. The U.S. Virgin Islands government sued Epstein's estate and uncovered evidence that the island served as a hub for trafficking, with staff members ordered to watch for younger-looking girls, private jets making late-night landings, and employees told to remain silent or be fired. The deeper investigators dug, the clearer it became. Epstein didn't operate alone. His entire life was built on networks, financial networks, political networks, social networks, and many people benefited from his connections. Maxwell wasn't just a former girlfriend. Many victims describe her as the architect of Epstein's operation, the recruiter, the gatekeeper, the person who normalized everything. She was the one who found girls, groomed them, gained their trust, and delivered them into Epstein's system. And yet, for years, she lived freely between London, New York, and her secluded New Hampshire estate. After Epstein's death, public pressure mounted. Victims demanded justice. Investigators reopened files. Journalists tracked her every move. For a year, she vanished completely. No public appearances. No confirmed sightings. Nothing. Until July 2020, when FBI agents found her hiding in a luxury home in New Hampshire, protected by cameras, gates, and private security. Her arrest reignited the entire case. During her trial in 2021, victims took the stand one by one, describing graphic scenes of manipulation, grooming, and abuse. They describe how Maxwell would approach them, often presenting herself as a big sister figure before slowly drawing them into Epstein's circle. The testimonies were so consistent and so disturbing that even observers in the courtroom struggled to maintain composure. Maxwell was convicted on 5 federal charges, including sex trafficking of minors. She was sentenced to 20 years in prison. But even after her conviction, the big questions remained. Who else was involved? Who else knew? And why were so many powerful individuals connected to Epstein? Flight logs from Epstein's private jet, the Lolita Express, listed politicians, CEOs, celebrities, royals, scientists, and billionaires. Visitor logs from his homes showed meetings with world leaders and major financiers. For decades, people came and went freely from his properties, including the notorious private island in the Virgin Islands. Many insisted they knew nothing. Some admitted to socializing with him but denied any involvement. Others remained silent. In the years after Epstein's death, lawsuits continued to expose more details. Victims filed cases against banks that handled Epstein's money. Deutsche Bank and JP Morgan Chase ultimately paid hundreds of millions in settlements for ignoring warning signs. The U.S. Virgin Islands government sued Epstein's estate and uncovered evidence that the island served as a hub for trafficking, with staff members ordered to watch for younger-looking girls, private jets making late-night landings, and employees told to remain silent or be fired. The deeper investigators dug, the clearer it became. Epstein didn't operate alone. His entire life was built on networks, financial networks, political networks, social networks, and many people benefited from his connections. The world believed Jeffrey Epstein's story ended the moment he was found dead in his Manhattan jail cell. But in reality, his death marked the beginning of a storm uncovering decades of secrecy, privilege, and influence that few dared investigate. Investigators, journalists, and victims began piecing together a network that spanned continents, industries, and the highest echelons of society. The centerpiece was Epstein's private island, Little St. James, in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Court documents, employee testimonies, and investigative reporting describe strict security measures, hidden surveillance cameras, and controlled access throughout the property. Guests arrived by private jets or helicopters, sometimes staying overnight. The island was not merely a retreat, it was a meticulously controlled environment. Luxury and privacy masked an operation organized with chilling precision. Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's longtime associate, played a central role. Court records show she recruited and groomed underage girls, preparing them to meet Epstein. Victims testified that Maxwell would earn their trust before delivering them into Epstein's network. Maxwell was arrested in July 2020 at a heavily secured home in New Hampshire. Her trial became one of the most closely watched in recent history, featuring harrowing accounts from numerous victims. She was convicted on multiple federal charges, including sex trafficking of minors, and sentenced to 20 years in prison. Epstein's methods for recruiting young girls were disturbingly systematic. According to verified court documents and victim testimonies, he often presented the meetings as massage sessions or minor job opportunities, convincing minors to come to his residences or offices. This strategy, combined with manipulation and grooming, was a consistent pattern, making the abuse deliberate and premeditated. The first known legal complaint against Epstein occurred in the early 1990s too. Sisters filed a civil suit accusing him of sexual misconduct. Court records confirm that the case was eventually closed or settled, allowing Epstein to avoid criminal charges at the time. This early case offers the first official glimpse into his pattern of predatory behavior. Long before the network expanded, flight logs provided another window into Epstein's world. Official records documented passengers on his private planes over the years, politicians, foreign dignitaries, wealthy business figures, and academics from prestigious institutions. While no criminal involvement was proven for many, the logs revealed repeated visits by a former US president, European royalty, tech billionaires, and renowned scientists. These associations were social, documented, and publicly verifiable, but without any confirmed illegal activity. The logs demonstrated the incredible reach of Epstein's influence across continents and sectors.